I hope you're cozy and feel free to move your seat. We still have some up here. So our speaker is the present mayor of Brisbane, Cliff Lentz, and he and I represent our individual cities at the San Francisco Airport Roundtable, which has been in existence, I believe, since 1983. So we are always watching to make sure that noise is not taken from one city and put on another city. So we're very careful to watch for that. However, and he will go into it in his other job, in his other part of his life, he has been able to sculpture his days so that he can go and learn so much. So I really value the knowledge that Cliff has gained and done on behalf of all of our cities to go out there and do the research and ask the questions and be there. So I'm very happy for that. That's why I invited him to come here. It is a presentation that he gave to his city of Brisbane, but I'm pretty sure you'll see that it covers most of your questions, and we certainly will have time for questions. So as an elected person from the city of Pacifica, I take this as a health issue, not as a noise convenience. So I've been pretty adamant about that. And I wanted to have not a presentation of SFO, what's going on at city council chambers. I wanted to have an opportunity for you to sit in a more relaxed and not have to worry about being at the podium and told you have 3 minutes, which is, a normal procedure. This is not a normal procedure. So I wanted to hear from you. I do hear from you, and the story is pretty much the same, but that's the more powerful of it. Pacifica at one time used to be affected more so in the Fairmont and northern part of Pacifica, and then all of a sudden there was a straight line right down the whole long length of Pacifica. And this is alarming. There's a lot to hear. There's a lot of complications, but in my opinion, it's very simple in some ways. When the public speaks, those that have the power to do have to do it. And so we're really talking about the FAA. And so what we put together is the FAA noise ombudsman. I knew a little bit about ombudsmans, that their job is to listen and to facilitate, to make things better for people. So I'm counting on that, and I'm asking all Pacificans to send your health issues to this one here, the FAA ombudsman. I got it right off of the FAA website. You have to go through, how when you get a website, you keep clicking, then finally you get down somewhere. That's where I found that. This one is the normal SFO roundtable way of doing it. They're getting so many complaints from everybody that it's taking 4 to 6 weeks to get an answer. The answer you get isn't going to be salvation for you. The answer for salvation, in my opinion, is coming from the FAA. This one, I put a little together. I borrowed the name Posse, I think, from Santa Cruz area. So I have a little posse here of Pacifica residents. And I've been hearing from Ray for a long, long time. He's a very knowledgeable fellow with what goes on in our city. And he watches it. And also from Ken, who is also, they have some veterans background knowledge that helps them in what they do. And then Jackie Spear has come on board a long time ago, actually, a long time, not years, but she's been very attentive and has been sending a representative, Brian Perkins, to our SFO meetings, and we have a schedule. You can go online. I think the next one, Cliff, am I right, February is our next meeting, and that's at the Chakotay Meeting Center in Millbrae at 7 p.m. It's right across the lawn from Millbrae Library. So that's at 7 p.m. The next one is February, that Wednesday. It's the second, probably. Now, because the SFO roundtable, I don't want to forget one more thing. So Jackie had brought in Brian Perkins to come to meetings for, I think, several years, and which we really appreciated that he was there in the audience hearing from us as roundtable people and any of the public that came. And then Jackie hired a retired commercial airline, passenger airline person who's with us tonight, Kathleen. I told her she's my favorite person because she's a pilot and she gets it. So I'm very pleased that she's here. I did not invite SFO staff people. This is for us this is our meeting of people and our elected persons. We want to empower you. We want you to hear the basics and then to tell you that these are 3 ways for you to be involved, and we really would like you to be involved. One of the folks added another one. The idea is, yes, use modern technology to refute the other modern technology. These are ways that you can, and I'll have Dan explain his, you can actually, I'm not going to do it. He's going to do it because it allows you to use your cell phone and just, anyway. It's precise, it's real data. They can't argue with it. That's the issue, okay? So you are the most important people because it's happening to you. So we want to know where you live. So we're asking for your neighborhood. We're assuming you want to be kept up to date on everything. But these apps here will help you to do that, and the media will help you to do that. The other thing is, I'm hoping that because Pacifica, we're 9 exits in along Pacifica, that each neighborhood would be willing to have 2 people come forward who would be an extension of our core posse, so that we could meet on a regular basis just to say, how's it going? Is there any change? What else should we do, okay? So that's why we asked for your neighborhood. So we'll be contacting you and sending out emails like who out there would willing to meet more often. Did I cover all that? Yes. And so don't let me forget to give Dan some time to explain his, this one here. What else do I need to say? So that's the basic thing. So some people who are not Pacificans, could you raise your hands? You're welcome. Don't be shy. San Francisco? I know some of you are San Francisco. Any other city?
Daly City.
Daly City, Brisbane, San Mateo, Foster City. Yes, it's hitting, if you haven't heard, it's all the way down to Santa Cruz. This is really, really, really. And again, I come back to, it's a health issue. So my point of view is it's a health issue. I want to empower you with as much knowledge of what in the world's going on and why it could be, why this is happening. And I think my most important thing is report, report, report. And focus in that it's a health issue, a health issue. Now, before I go on to Cliff, give him time to breathe, I had the mission statement. Where to go? I'm a teacher, so I go after, like mission stuff. I went to the FAA for the mission. Our continuing mission is to provide the safest, most efficient aerospace system in the world. So you see, there's safest and efficient. So we want to say within safest, health of the surrounding neighborhoods is important. Our vision, to strive to reach the next level of safety, efficiency, environmental responsibility. Well, we're part of the environment. And global leadership. Aha! So challenge them. We are accountable to the American public.
Yeah, right.
And to our stakeholders. But you take their mission statement and you quote it. And you are the public, okay? And we love to be able to travel. We're not trying to go back to the horse and buggy. We just want them to stick to their mission and their vision and to do it comprehensively and not at our expense. So I think I'll stop for that, and I'll introduce Cliff. As I said, I really respect all the hard work that he has done as a council member and as a mayor of Brisbane and as our chair of our SFO roundtable. So Cliff, are you ready to go?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. And if you can't see or hear, please raise your hand.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. And it's an honor to be here this evening. Mayor Degree, you said everything right on the money. This is a public issue. We're dealing with a public agency that is supposed to represent us, and they're supposed to engage us. And they do that sometimes, but not all the time. Definitely not with these new flight procedures. About a year ago, the FAA had put forth an environmental assessment of the new flight procedures. And prior to that, we had pushed the FAA to let us have a seat at the table in the design of these new flight procedures. They said, sorry, we can't do that. For legal reasons, we can't do it. Though they've changed their tune with these other metroplexes that are being developed in other parts of the country, such as in Southern California. Unfortunately for us, we arrived before them to have our area go under this new GPS system. And so Southern California is learning lessons that, we hoped that we could have implemented when we were dealing with the FAA. So we had these workshops instead that the FAA put forth. And they did one in Oakland, one in San Jose, one in San Francisco, one in San Mateo County. And they demonstrated to us what these new flight procedures were going to do. But the details were not that great. And of course, there was no real engagement, no feedback from us that they took to perhaps modify the flight procedures. And one of the major mistakes from the FAA not engaging us is that we know the territory. Right? The folks, the designers of these new flight procedures, they don't live here. So they're looking at the lay of the land from the 30,000 foot level. We're here at the ground level. And so there are some areas in our communities where people don't live, like the Bay. Right? I mean, we don't utilize the Bay enough. And so that's one of the things that we need to work on. In our town, Brisbane, we have an area called the Baylands. It's a vast, it's kind of a wasteland. I mean, we're hoping that we'll turn that wasteland into something pretty amazing. But at this point, right now, it's a 660-acre site void of people. Yet, most of the planes, when they make the turn to, coming off of the Bay, they go right over our residential area and not over the area that doesn't have people, right? It doesn't make sense. So, I don't know the territory of Pacifica, but all of you do. And so it's so important at this stage of the game to really identify what are the flight procedures that are causing the problems for you. And within these flight procedures, what things that you know about could potentially make a difference. And so we've had these new flight procedures for about a year now. And they've caused a lot of grief for many communities, not only in San Mateo County, but in Santa Clara County and in Santa Cruz County. And so the amount of complaints has gone through the roof. I mean, it's just intense. And because of that, because of all those complaints, our congressional leaders, Congresswoman Spear, Eshoo, and Farr, have been able to use that and to put pressure on the folks within the FAA that call the shots. And so because of that, the FAA put forth an initiative. Now, I've been on the SFO roundtable for about, maybe 3.5, 4 years. So you've been on it for a long time, right? And so dealing with the FAA in Washington, D.C., it's kind of like, talking to the hand. It's just, it doesn't work. Now, our local FAA, they have been very receptive, and we've been able to work with them. And we want to continue that positive relationship with them, because it's crucial, because by having those good lines of communication and having trust, you can get things accomplished. So the FAA has put forth this initiative based upon that pressure from our congressional members and the public. So thank you for making those calls and using your app to log in those complaints. And so the FAA says, okay, we've taken in this information and we want to collaborate with you. We want to make some potential changes, and we're going to work with you. We're going to put forth these 3 phases. Now, during this first phase, we don't know when it's going to start and what type of collaboration they're going to engage us in. So the SFO roundtable has taken a more proactive approach rather than waiting for the FAA to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. No, we have that. The SFO roundtable has these 2 technical working group subcommittees. And fortunately for us, that we took that initiative to create these 2 bodies, because we are in a great position to take on these flight procedures in a more technical, more in the weeds approach to make changes. And so one of the examples that I'm going to show you tonight is the stick procedure and how it relates with the candle procedure coming out of Oakland. And this procedure not only affects Brisbane, but it affects Pacifica as well. And it's an example of what we could potentially do as, as the public provides feedback and the SFO roundtable members come together to work with staff, to work with the airports, and to work with the local FAA and the airlines to modify these procedures. So we could probably start with doing the presentation that I gave for the Brisbane City Council. All right.
Can you all see? Everybody okay? Please move their seats up here.
Okay, so what you see,
Lights.
Dim the lights. Yeah, he's out about to do it. Thank you, Ed.
all right, so what you have here is just basically a map showing here is SFO, up here is the Oakland Airport, and this plane right here is flying the stick procedure.
What procedure?
The stick,
Want to spell it? The letters?
SSTIK.
Acronym.
So, yes, what it stands for, don't ask me, but yeah, well, I mean, yeah, sure, it's for the candlestick, and the Oakland flight that comes out of here is called the Candle, CNDEL.
Candlestick.
So prior to the stick procedure, this is one of the new procedures. There was a waypoint that was up here called the SEPTI. And basically the planes would fly out of SFO. They were supposed to go through the SEPTI waypoint and then make this turn and then head south. There's a waypoint that's down here somewhere, and it's called the port waypoint. And the Candle flight that comes out of Oakland is supposed to come out here, come around, and also go to that same waypoint called the port. So with the stick waypoint, what has happened, and we've been experiencing this for many, many years, is that instead of the plane flying to the waypoint and then making its turn over the Baylands, which is this area here, the air traffic controllers are vectoring the planes and having them turn early in this area. Our residential area is right here, and the planes have been making this early turn, coming across here, causing noise disturbances, and then heading across west and then heading south. And I was talking with Bert Ganong from SFO yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And because I wanted to get a little bit of information about what's going on in Pacifica. Why is this procedure, the stick procedure, causing problems in Pacifica? If the plane is taking off here and rising in altitude, it should, by the time it gets to Pacifica, shouldn't cause any problems because it should be higher. But one of the things that Bert told me, he says, I don't know why the planes are doing this, but they're maintaining their elevation, which is really dumb, right? And so they're getting over San Bruno Mountain. Instead of continuing to climb, they're just kind of staying about the same height. And so the noise issues that we're receiving in Brisbane here, you're getting them here in Pacifica. Here's just another example. Well, here's an example of that plane, a stick procedure, cutting it early. And so we wound up getting some data from our consultant. Her name is Cindy. She's from this consulting firm called BridgeNet. And so we will be using her company to gather the data that's necessary that we're going to need. Because in order to present a very strong case to the FAA, it needs to be data-driven. And so this slide shows that here you have this very efficient GPS procedure, and yet when you add it all up, you know, maybe they're flying at 60% of the time. Now, we have spent millions of dollars of taxpayer money on this new system. And you know what? They're flying it the same way as they were doing it before. So why is that? And that's, you know, what we're trying to figure out. And this picture here shows the Baylands. We wanted to give the FAA an example of where the flights should go once they reach land. So this is a simulation, and the folks that attended our last technical working group meeting, you know, we showed it, and I don't think that this slide presentation is going to be able to do that. But basically, the SFO flight, the stick, flies here, makes a turn over the Baylands, and heads south. The Oakland flight, the Candle, is supposed to go through the Candle waypoint and then head south. So Sue brought up the mission, or one of the models of the FAA is supposed to be safety and efficiency. And so in order to be safe from a horizontal position, and I'm sorry, a lot of this stuff is technical, but the FAA requires that there be 6 miles of head-to-head separation of planes. And then if they're side by side, it's 3 miles. Now, if they're vertical, top, bottom, it's only 1,000 feet, which I think is really crazy. I mean, I would never, say, okay, you guys have to uphold that 1,000-foot, standard and, make the planes fly, 1,000 feet and you can do it. No, I would never recommend that. But one of the things that is important about this simulation is that it shows that the FAA's design of these two flight procedures are compatible with each other. And thus, this space between these two waypoints here is about 6 miles. So there's no reason for vectoring this plane here for safety reasons. But that has been their reason for making these turns. But now we've shown that these two flight procedures can be compatible with each other. Unfortunately, this Candle procedure is turning early and is not reaching the Candle waypoint. And so when this flight turns early, it's coming right here. And then that causes the air traffic controller to turn this plane early. And so what's happening is there's this cascade effect that does not need to occur. But we're in, the style, the techniques of the old system, and they have not initiated the new system. So let's see what we got here. Okay, let me go back to this slide. Let me just go back to that other slide. If we can make it big, that's possible. Tell me what I need to do. This guy right here?
So is your question something like, what is the waypoint?
Well, let me just finish. If you can just make it bigger, sir.
Yeah, so we'd like to hold off.
Oh, where's it at?
Top left.
Oh.
After Cliff has spoken, and I'm sure you guys all have some
Oh, that wasn't it.
specific comments about your neighborhood thing.
Okay. Let me just move it. Okay, good. All right. So the reason I came back to this slide is because originally I had put this thing together prior to the FAA's initiative. I did not think, or I had no clue, or no expectations that the FAA would ever, provide this initiative, that they would ever really seriously and sincerely engage with us. but they have. And so here's this document, and it's in writing. So we're going to hold their feet to the fire. So since in this initiative, in this coordination with the public, they have said, well, we'll look at altitude. We'll look at speed. We'll look at moving waypoints. So if that's the case, instead of having the stick waypoint here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at perhaps moving it to the south and a little bit to the east. Right? Have a waypoint here. Then perhaps have a waypoint here and here. So that the plane, instead of coming this way and turning early, we're going to guide it here, here, and here. And apply an altitude to the waypoint. So when I was talking with Bert, he said, well, for safety reasons, because you got to remember, there's planes coming down this way. Right? There's a lot of traffic, and we always have to keep that in mind. We live in a dense area, and we got the airport right here, so there's a lot of stuff happening. So for the planes to be safe in this area here, 6,000 to 7,000 feet works. Well, if we got to 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet here, and made it to maybe 7,000, 8,000 feet here, that's a lot better than the 3,000 feet that we're experiencing, right? It's huge. It's a big, big difference. So not only are you at a higher elevation here, but you're also over an area that doesn't have people. So now I haven't recommended a waypoint in this area. And the reason being is that, so I'm a council member in the city of Brisbane, but I'm the chair of the SFO roundtable. And when it comes to airplane stuff, I take my job very, very seriously. And so I do not want anyone to ever think that I was trying to disfavor Brisbane and not other communities. So should we have a waypoint out here somewhere? I'm not sure. And that's for all of us to work out and hopefully come to some kind of consensus that makes sense. When you look at this area right here, I grew up in South City. There's a valley here. And then there's the coastal range here. So 8,000 feet here is different than 8,000 feet here, or if it's 4,000 feet, whatever, right? Because you truly got 4,000 feet here, but when it comes to people connecting with the planes over here, it's a lot closer, right? So we need to be aware of that. That's understanding the lay of the land. So what I've presented to you is just one example of what we potentially could do, is working together as the roundtable, representing our communities, trying to work with the FAA. And just one last procedure that I'm going to show you, and we're hoping that we can make it one of the new RNAV procedures, and it's a 050 operation. So what that means is that plane takes off here, and this would be at nighttime, say from 10 to 6. Instead of doing this, comes up here, and then makes a turn and comes down the bay. Doesn't bother anybody. You don't have to worry about how high the plane is because it's over the water. That is a procedure that the FAA used to do on a more regular basis before the new RNAV procedures. This was one of those low-hanging fruit procedures that we as the roundtable worked really hard with the local FAA to implement. And I believe that the Oakland flights, they also turn and they come down the bay as well. So if we can make that an RNAV procedure, something that's on a regular basis, not something that, okay, is part of our Fly Quiet program, it's an option, we should make it more of a regular procedure. And that would be at nighttime, so that when folks are trying to get to sleep, and when they are sleeping, they're not bothered by the noise. So I'm a council member, and Sue, she's a council member too. And it's, in a sense, it's really a part-time gig, right? You know, the amount of money that we receive, I mean, it's enough to maybe buy some groceries for the year. But you take on a position like this because you care and you want to make a difference. I mean, that's the bottom line. And so, you know, I've just admired the work that Mayor Degree has done on the roundtable and in all other, you know, areas of, you know, trying to make things better in our communities. But in regards to this, if we're going to make a difference, we have to get our act together, and we have to have something that the FAA is not going to reject. It has to be safe, and the efficiency thing is a big deal to them. And to ignore it, I think, is a mistake. I believe that these new flight procedures were created, and don't quote me on this, by Congress wanting the FAA to be more efficient. And so these new flight procedures came from that push from Congress to make this happen. So I think I'll stop there, and sure, Sue.
For those of us who may not know what a waypoint is, waypoint, and if there was any other term that was used, waypoint, if you could just explain the waypoint.
Sure. So, the waypoint is this GPS fix. You know, back in the day, they used to have these land-based navigational aids. And with that old system, yeah, you could see why air traffic controllers wanted to vector, because they wanted to make sure that the airspace was safe. And they weren't as reliable as the GPS ones. These GPS fixes are very reliable, and the pilot will program the plane to fly to that fix, and then the next fix, and the following. So that is the ultimate goal of the FAA, is to have these planes in a more predictable and consistent flight procedure. However, we know that if these planes are more, like they used to call it, flying on a rail, that certain folks are really going to get hammered all the time. Now I said, I grew up in South San Francisco, and my mom, she still lives in the same city that I grew up, same house that I grew up in. And as far as I can remember, I mean, these GPS, flight procedures were happening because those planes consistently flew over my mom's house within one or two houses all the time. And that's the gap procedure. And so, flies over my mom's house in South City, it's going to go to Daly City and parts of Pacifica. How can we get these planes to fly higher, and then perhaps maybe share that noise issue, that noise burden. I think it's something that we need to explore. But these waypoints are these GPS fixes.
All right, thank Chairman Lentz for this. It was very good. Thank you very much. Before I take questions, because I'm not very techie, I really appreciate, so I have this posse with me, and Dan actually created that one app, so if he could take a minute or so to explain that to you so you can use it.
Thanks, Sue. And I'd just like to thank Cliff Lentz, by the way, for fighting for Pacifica also. He's realized that Brisbane and Pacifica's interests do overlap quite a bit in this. I've been to a bunch of SFO, Oakland, community roundtable meetings in North County. Basically, when you cross 3 congressional districts with air traffic, you're going to have some problems, and you're going to get some attention. The 3 ways to contact the FAA to complain have been through the Noise Ombudsman's email, the sfroundtable.org. You'd go on there and you would click, how do I? And then you would click a drop down called file a complaint. We've got another way we built, a really light app. It's actually a website called loudjet.net. Pulls the GPS off your phone. It's using GPS high, actually. It's more accurate off your phone than off your computer. But if you're in the Bay Area, you have the best GPS tracking on earth, Palo Alto especially. We've done some war driving around and seen. Basically, it's a one-click. The middle of the night, you wake up, go to loudjet.net. It saves your email there, one click, and you're recording a complaint. We submit that. We batch process that through a supplier in Melbourne, through the SFO Community Roundtable, and also we batch process at the FAA in DC at the end of the month. There's a lot of different apps that are collecting noise around the US. The important thing is that if we're collecting data only in Pacifica, only in Brisbane, we're not credible as a data supplier for the entire US. So what we're trying to do is get as many groups as possible, as many airports as possible to participate in there. And you know, there's definitely a huge problem here. Brisbane, San Francisco, Pacifica has a departure problem. Palo Alto and Santa Cruz tend to have more of an arrival problem, but I definitely appreciate everything everyone on the roundtable is doing. I thank you, Mayor Degree, Chairman Cliff Lentz, and also Kathleen Wentworth from Jackie Spears' office. Thank you very much.
And so those subcommittees that we created, Cliff and I and a couple other, the council persons on SFO really pushed for subcommittees so we could be more in depth and connecting with SFO on a regular basis besides our regular SFO roundtable meetings. So I will take questions. I have a roving mic here, and if you have to leave, I hope that you have gotten enough information. Your emails are there. You will definitely be kept going. I am not techie, and I can't get around to the SFO as much as Cliff has, so I have my little posse, Ken, Ray, Dan, and anybody else that wants to join us, Kathleen's over there, to help me stay on top of it for you Pacificans in particular so I don't miss a thing. Okay. Just say your name.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Axel Cloth and I live in Pacifica. Oh. My name is Axel Cloth and I live in Pacifica in Manor, actually on Monterey Road. And I'd be happy to help out with data gathering and collection. There's actually a website called flighttracker.org, and they track flights in all 3 dimensions of the coordinate system all over the planet. So I will go and try to figure out if I can get the data from flighttracker.org to get all the data that pertains to the airports that we've listed here. If that's the case, we have all the data that we need, and they track actually the height. One of the things that I think has changed with the new flight procedures is that the flight corridors have changed such that the incline is less steep. So in other words, the aircraft ascends a whole lot slower, which means we are covered by much more noise in larger corridors. And I think that's the biggest problem of all. And the reason for that is very likely that the airlines want to save on kerosene, because that saves fuel, right? So I can imagine that that's the reason behind the change. So I'd be happy to do whatever I can do to give you all the data that there is. I signed in, I can, yes. Absolutely, I will. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Yes, please say your name.
Good evening. My name is Robert Farrell. I live in Fairmont West. As you can see that red line for the departures, that's pointing right at my house. 3 days ago, an airplane came over, and I was having a cup of coffee, and I asked the pilot if he wanted to join me. I cannot believe how low they are. I mean, we're at 400 feet elevation from sea level. And that thing, I swear, was taking the tops off the trees. And it was a big jumbo heavy. It was a 747 going across the Pacific, so it had a full load of fuel load of cargo. And boy howdy, when they comes through at 3:30 in the morning, it is very, very disruptive to anybody's sleep. I don't care where you're living. And I imagine down there in the gap itself, the guy wasn't coming up that fast. You know, there's no reason for him to come over 200 feet above my house. I mean, yes, that's above skyline, barely. But, whew, it's scary. And also, I had a question. Do we have statistical data from Fairmont, from SFO Noise Monitor number 19 in Fairmont Park that shows trends as far as flight frequency and decibel noise? And is there any noise abatement funding like there was previously when the new airlines started flying the 747s? Well, noise abatement, yeah, with windows and insulation both.
Excellent question, and we will taking notes on these questions. I've asked before, and I continue to ask, there isn't presently money for insulation. But we keep that in mind. Okay, so we're not forgetting that. We're definitely pushing for that as much as possible, but no.
Wendell Potter, as a follow-up to that last question, has there been any significant change over 5 years, say, in that takeoff path that you were just describing, in number of planes, number of the big heavy planes, and elevation? Do we know anything about that?
All right, so you're talking about the stick procedure?
No,
Or
the red line, the straight takeoff
the
off the long runway.
gap? You know, so every time we have a meeting, John Martin gives us an update, and the amount of traffic going through SFO has increased. So we are getting,
In terms of these really heavy planes that go extremely low, and
Is this any time during the day or any particular time?
very, all day. The 747s, and I can recognize them, but there's probably some others.
so, let's see, today's Tuesday, so Thursday morning. Getting my days in order here. So Thursday morning, we're going to have a technical working group meeting at 10 a.m. on Thursday at SFO, at the SFO Noise Abatement Office. Is it 9 o'clock? Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, it's going to be at 9 o'clock. Thank you, sir. At the SFO Noise Abatement Office. And so we will be addressing the gap departures as well and looking at ways to perhaps make improvements. That is a tough nut to crack. And so each plane is different and they have certain capabilities.
Right.
And so some planes can get higher a lot faster. And some of the planes, I think, can, because of their size, because they're smaller. The
737s just sit by.
yeah, so this so the 2.8 is much longer than the 1, and so it's shorter here. And some of these big planes, for safety reasons, they cannot fly off of that runway, and so they need the longer runway. So, but some of the planes that go back east. I mean, I saw an Emirates plane. I was canvassing in Daly City the other night, and it was. I mean, I kid you not. I mean, that plane. I thought I could throw a rock and hit it. It was so darn close. I mean, you just really see the Emirates. I mean, just clear as day. On the underbelly of the plane. Why is that? How come this smaller plane is like having a hard time making its way, up the hill before it goes out over the ocean? It should be higher. So that is something that we're going to look at, sir.
And just to follow up real
Back there.
quickly, we do have that data. It is public knowledge through 2013, and it has been rising, but this is a record year for SFO. We've got 50 million passengers this year. So if you talk to me afterwards, I'll try to get you that data. And in answer to the German gentleman's question, ADSB radar, that flight radar, ADBS antenna that flight radar reports is between 62 and 90% of airports in the United States, so it doesn't cover every aircraft.
Hi, Kevin McGee. I live in Lindemar. Thanks for this, Sue and everyone. So I've actually been noticing this as a problem for more than like 4 years, because I started noticing it getting louder about in 2012. I started complaining in 2013 because my wife got tired of hearing me in 2012. And so anyway, it's gotten progressively, I think, worse, kind of in my area. And they do seem to be a lot lower, and they're really just kicking it up, to accelerate and to gain altitude. But sometimes over my house, I've got like planes every 2 minutes, like not from 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, sometimes at, middle of the night. So I got tired of writing them down because I'd be writing something every 2 minutes. And I'm glad we got the new loud jet thing. Thank you. Because the old form was very difficult to complete. But anyway, I'm glad that we're looking at this now. I think it's definitely a health issue. It's also a visual issue. I mean, I don't know if people notice, but we have planes flying down the beach now. Like you see planes flying down the beach. I saw like four or five planes in the air when I was walking on the Rockaway Beach Trail, like coming in different directions. And you see them back in the park, at the county park in the back of the valley now. So anyway, it's a visual and a health issue. So thank you.
And keep reporting. That's very important. Anybody in the back? Let me get it. I heard a voice.
Hi, my name is Candace Burdick. I live in Valleymar. And in regards to this loudjet.net, is there any way, if I'm reporting on there, is there any way for me to gather the information instead of writing it down every 2 minutes that I've reported for my own?
Yeah, if you email us, we can report your entire history back to you. We're going to eventually have an interface that's going to map everybody's history and where they can log on and kind of find it. The basic goal is to keep it as minimal as possible and keep the data as reliable as possible. Thank you.
My name's Roger Maceo. I live in Lindemar. We had this problem about 15 or 20 years ago. Oh, sorry. We had this problem about 15 or 20 years ago, or it was about the time when the roundtable started in Millbrae. And it wasn't as bad as this, but back then they were flying, when they turned across Pacifica, they didn't come down over Pacifica coming south, they went out into the ocean, and that's even quieter. And then they quit doing that, and we argued at the meetings, and we said, why can't you do that? And they admitted the airlines wanted to save fuel. It was more direct to go south to LA or wherever. So I'd like to see them go back over the ocean again, like they did.
Yes, thank you. My name is Yuri. I just moved to Valleymar in 2012, and I experienced the same thing. Dramatic change. Pretty much I end up on the highway of planes. As the gentleman mentioned, I made myself over 3,000 complaints this year, 2014-15, using Space Rock. I haven't used Europe. Really, one click. All you have to do is have your cell phone next to you. And it's all started, this whole process started because people in Palo Alto and Santa Cruz stand up. Not us, unfortunately. I know because Brisbane started it first, but our voice was so low. We were about 1,000 complaints per month when it started. Now it's about 60,000 to 70,000 a month. It's a huge increase. And they start listening to us. So I'm asking all Pacificans, be active. Complain to your representatives, call airports, use this application, one click a day, 70,000 people, that's 70,000 complaints for Pacifica. All it started from the grid, airline industry and other few industries. I've done a lot of research, I am not prepared today, but money, that's all.
That's right.
That's all.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. You know what they're saving? They're saving $3 per passenger by cutting through our neighborhoods. That's all. It should be a privilege to fly through Bay Area. Yeah.
No, I don't want to cut you off, but I have a lot of people with questions and don't disagree about the money.
Hi, there's two things. I'm Charlie Wambeck. I'm from San Francisco, the Excelsior District. And I had a question about you talked about efficiency. What does that actually mean? And I'm looking at these red lines here. None of them go over my neighborhood. How come I got 30, 40, 50 planes a day coming over my neighborhood? You know, if they don't, it doesn't even show up on that map. And I live in San Francisco in the Excelsior District.
Want to say something?
Is he getting hit by candle?
But I live in Valleymar, and I made a complaint, and the SFO group of noise abatement people sent me a lot of data, and one of those pieces of data showed for 1 month the number of flights coming out of SFO and where they come, and it looked like a spaghetti thing, and a few of them went over San Francisco, but now a lot more are going over San Francisco. And as a gentleman said over here a little bit, they used to go further out over the ocean and make their turns, fly to the southwest or wherever, the east. But now it's to save fuel, they're doing that, so.
And Charlie, some of your specific problems are related to Oakland's candle pattern, which essentially mimics the stick pattern completely once it clears north of San Francisco. there's a 3-mile distance between them, but that's some of your issues also.
Yeah, well, San Francisco Airport answered me and they said, get used to it, enjoy the quiet while you can.
I used to fly the coast working for the Navy. Our service area is from San Diego to through Alaska. And I always flew out over the ocean in the past. The question I have, and also a comment, is when they talk about GPS that Cliff has been talking about, the other term is next gen. And that's not only with the ground controllers, but eventually it's all going to be on individual aircraft, where you have a 1,000-foot separation, vertical separation, if aircraft are below and top of each other. Next gen is probably going to bring that down to about 200, 300 feet. Now, this is an admission that the air corridors are as congested as the Bay Area roadways in many ways. So if you have more precision in your location, then you're getting away from the radar-based system that kept this 6-mile separation or 3-mile separation, and even the 1,000-foot vertical, where they're doing it by radar. They're, right now, even under their current regulations, you would think that 1,000-foot separation, they might be able to slip some of the departures in the same track as they're running the Oakland. If it's a dedicated, if that's changed to where they're not allowing any aircraft from SFO to enter that track out of Oakland's airport tracking, which does go out under the normal, what I experienced. I was always used to be able to see the coastline. And I could see on a clear day my house in Park Pacifica area. But the other thing is these complaints that you're registering are probably the means by which you're going to keep FAA interested enough that they'll pay attention to you. Now, how much attention they pay to you is going to be dependent on how squeaky a wheel you all are and how effective our congressional representatives are in getting this, because it has changed. And a lot of talk about the bottom line money. I think even FAA, when they originally put out next gen information, admitted that this was something they were looking forward to, but maybe for more altruistic endeavors, is that it's a crowded sky up there and they want it safe, but try not to forget the people under that sky. And I think that's where we're coming from.
Sue Waterloss. We had about 10 years ago a memorandum of understanding regarding the airport flight area and the noise zone. That noise zone was only in Fairmont. So I'm a realtor, we have to notify people of the airport noise. Now we have to tell people in the entire town about airport noise, when originally there's an understanding that where the airplanes are supposed to go, and they're obviously not doing that.
Thank you for that. We will bring that up as well. Some questions in the back? Oh, I must be blind. Okay, well, yeah.
Your map here does not depict what I see as what's going on here. I live right on Manor, on Dolphin Avenue. I have an airplane going over our house. Every minute and 18 seconds I've been timing them since we moved there 4 months ago. So what you're showing here is not what's happening here at all. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate that. My second question is, why doesn't this depict what's going on with air traffic here? It doesn't depict it at all. Your map doesn't show what's going on. Item 2, has FAA completed environmental impact statements on these changes in all these airplanes? Okay. Have they done that? Probably not, right? Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hold on, does anybody want to take
I
a question
didn't
and
hear
answer this right at the moment?
Yeah, so I didn't catch the first question, but I mean the second question, but the first one in regards to what we're showing here, we're trying to take the approach of, okay, let's do it this way, right? Let's see if we can, guide, or not say guide, but work with the FAA to implement something that is a win-win for everybody. You have the safety, you have the efficiency, while also reducing the noise impacts. We know there's a problem, and we can be here all day complaining about the problem. Maybe that might make us feel good a little bit, but you know what? In the end, you want results. You want to get something done, and the best way to do that is to have a smart game plan. And so that's what we're trying to do in these technical working group meetings. That's where it's going to happen. So if you can make the meeting, I recommend that you go there. And then, sir, what was the other?
Second question was, has FAA completed environmental impact statements on all those changes on the flight paths? Have they done that?
I don't know. I know that they've done their, so.
All right, hold on. We're here to get good results.
Yeah,
so.
remember, I'm not from the FAA. So now they did do their environmental assessment. And then after they did the environmental assessment, they said that there was a finding of no significant impact, right? They call it a FONSI, right? So now the FAA, when they did the EA, the environmental assessment, they went beyond what they had to do. They felt, hey, we're gonna do this additional step for the public, which in the end was a bunch of BS anyways, because they already knew that they were gonna design these procedures. And there weren't gonna be any, findings of significant impacts, and so negative impacts. And so, yeah, it didn't really help us from an environmental perspective, in my opinion. So, I'm glad that Sue is bringing up health as an issue, because we definitely need to be looking at that as we present our case for why these flight procedures need to be altered so that they are reducing the negative impacts on our health, right? Yeah, on our psyche. Yeah. So.
And when you look at regarding the accuracy of that stick pattern, when you look a little bit more of the stick pattern, and I'm going to walk up to the screen here and yell. The stick pattern actually extends over here, travels down the peninsula, and then splits into 3 separate legs. Being kind of essentially that probably would affect your house. I can take a look at the map. I don't have it in front of me, but that explains a little bit more about how those maps are accurate.
Does the FAA have any maps that show population density?
All right, I'm going to ask you to hang on because there's people waiting. Hold on to that question. Anybody else back here?
John Keener. With respect to your question, your first question, if you use the LoudJet.net app, the location of the noise will be recorded. So I would strongly encourage everybody to use the app.
Thank you. Somebody in the back rows here. Thank you. And this is why I have a posse, because you see they're able to answer questions, and we're taking all this back in our brains to all the meetings that we will be attending.
I live in the back of Pacifica off of Odstead in St. Lawrence, and close to the mountains. And for me, it's the noise has been going on for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's gotten really loud. I mean, to the point that at night I'm hearing it like over and over and over again. And I'm really concerned. I moved to Pacifica because of the ocean and the fresh air. Now it's like I'm seeing dust in the house and all the stuff that comes along with living in Daly City, not in Pacifica. And so my biggest concern is that what are we going to do about it? It's great to have committees and talk about it, but the city of Palo Alto and Santa Cruz have obviously been able to do something about it and get some things changed. So I'm hoping that there's not a lot that I receive from the city for services. So I'm hoping that this would be one thing that is not going to lower the house prices, because now we have to disclose to everybody that we got planes flying over Pacifica all the time.
Janice?
I've been using the app stop.jetnoise.net, and I've been using it since November 3rd. And every day, obviously, there's a report. It tells me how many reports I make, how many reports have been made, the altitude, the airline, and I haven't gotten any response at all from that. So, I mean, I've been up to, I live in Park Pacifica, so I have about 200 flights a day going over my house. And, we've been on that website Nextdoor, where we're all talking to each other, and it's a minute apart now, and, it feels like we're in a war zone. And when they fly a little higher, what it sounds like is it's a thunderstorm. So there's constant noise. So when it's loud, it sounds like you're in a war zone. Otherwise, it just sounds like you're in a thunderstorm all the time. So, I got so frustrated that on December 8th, I also wrote an email to the White House. And I got a very, we received your email, but then a week ago, I got a form letter from the FAA saying that they had done an environmental study and, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that. I mean, it's crazy where we live. When I moved here in '97, there was nothing. I asked my realtor, is there any jets flying over here? And they said no. And I grew up in the Burlingame Hills where I could see the airport. And we would have flights on a very rare occasion when the storms, it was a rare storm, and then they would move them over for just a short time, and they never came over again. So this is something I'm just not used to. I never would have moved here.
Thank you. If you would like a copy of that letter, back up to the front here.
Hi, my name's Steve Baker. I'm a resident of Foster City. And my background is I live right underneath the arrival path to 28 left, and I was a member of the Foster City Noise Abatement Committee, a Citizens Advisory Board, went to the roundtable meetings for a long time. Okay, and what I discovered from my experience is if the FAA would just do what they're supposed to do, what they've agreed to do, and fly the flight procedures that they're supposed to, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we all have. Amen. But the bottom line is, I don't know whether it's apathy, laziness on their part, what the traffic controllers, maybe they're telling the pilots to do one thing, the pilots don't want to do what they're being told, I'm not sure. But if they did just what they're supposed to do, the way they're supposed to do it, it would alleviate a lot of our problems. And something the mayor of Brisbane mentioned was like turning and going down the middle of the bay or something. Like from my perspective, it's like, well, if Oakland and SFO does that going south, what's it going to do to the arrival path? So we need to be very careful about shifting noise from one place to another. We live in a very dense urban environment. To think that we're ever not going to hear airplane noise or look up and not see a plane, that's never going to happen. So we need to realize that all we can do is mitigate it to the best of our ability. And like someone else pointed out, the squeaky wheel will get greased if you keep the pressure on them. So keep doing this sort of thing. I came up here from Foster City to see what was going on here. And it's a problem all over the Bay Area. So keep the pressure on the FAA. They have flight patterns in place. And if they would just do what they've agreed to do and what they're supposed to do, it would be a whole lot better for all of us. Thanks.
Sue, can I interject?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
There's been a couple of meeting times. On Thursday, the subcommittees for departure and arrivals under the roundtable are going to meet. But I have a copy of their actual agenda here. The departures is the first group to meet in the AM hour from...
In the article, it says that departures is in the afternoon and the arrivals is in the morning.
Well...
I'm sorry, you're right. The departures.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's from 9 a.m. to 11:30 for departures, and then arrivals 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. they will validate your parking if you get there soon enough to have Bert or somebody else validate it for you. But the meeting, I don't know if we're going to have a larger room or whatever, but I think it would impress upon them having more people than there were last time. So if you can come to the meeting, the departures, if that's your major concern, or the arrivals for those that are in the flight path coming in.
Tell them it's on the mezzanine, Terminal 1, over the Delta.
What I can do is actually I'll leave the agenda right on the corner here, and it's got directions as to where you could park and all the particulars.
You can Google SFO Roundtable. It's all on there.
It's all on there
It's a
too.
subcommittee you're looking for. Over here.
I'm David Whitney. I live in northern Pacifica in Fairmont. And all these flights started in 2014 when they were doing the runway repairs, and it was supposed to end. Never ended. It got worse. And the flights, one day, there was every 5 minutes for a couple hours. And I got so mad, I called up, and they said they knew my address, had exactly 40 flights over 2 hours. And he said that the business had increased, they had smaller airplane, and the wind conditions, and it was going to get worse, not better. And I told them I was going to take it up with the Pacific Airport Noise Committee, and it's like they didn't even care, like nothing was going to happen. And I've been following this. I thought it was just going to be my area, but it's all over the place, and I'm absolutely amazed that this situation has developed with this FAA and congressional action. They should really have an investigation of what's going on. Thank you.
Anybody else on this one? Then I'll come back up here. There you go. I won't forget you.
My name is Erin Macias, and I've lived here about 19 years, and when we bought our house here, we had no noise at all. So it has dramatically altered our quality of life. I did speak at the SFO Airport Roundtable, so I don't want to repeat anything I had said before, but I wanted to speak to a gentleman's comment about the diagram. Is he still here? Did he leave? Okay. There was, in the director's report, there was another diagram that literally it looked like an explosion of colored lines. And that was much more reflective of what we're experiencing in San Francisco. You know, you could clearly see they were going over San Francisco. You know, my mother-in-law lives in the Sunset. They're going over her house. They never went over her house before either. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is that, you know, we built a new runway at SFO. So kind of what did we expect? I guess we should have expected an increase in flights. So we're up to approximately, if my numbers are correct, about 40,000 flights per month now. Some of the recommendations that I really see that truly alter our quality of life are these international carriers. The international carriers cannot climb as quickly as some of the other ones, and so therefore they're large. My cousin actually works for SFO, and she posted on Christmas Eve that there was an Airbus. I think she said 323. I was trying to find her comment, and there were 4 people on the flight. So, you know, efficiency. It may be more efficient to, you know, make this path, but 4 people on an airplane is just ridiculous, especially a plane that large carrying that amount of fuel. The other comment I wanted to make had to do with, you know, those cargo flights and international carriers. Well, I believe it was the month before last, we added 4 international carriers to SFO. It was United, Emirates, like Aer Lingus, I think, and Air China. My sister was on that Air China flight 2 nights ago, so I told her to wave at me as she went over my house at 12:05 a.m. And I heard her. So I think also kind of strategy from the SFO Roundtable is to say, you know, what can we do to prevent the addition of international carriers coming into SFO? I understand they generate a lot of income, but, you know, the main issue with the noise and the vibration and the pollution really is coming from those large planes.
Something else we've been working on for a couple of years is modern technology on their craft itself. And so the larger airplanes that are more modern actually are quiet. So we're also pushing on that. Who had their hand up?
My name's Dave Ellis, and I live in Valimar.
And I was just, Sue just addressed the question that I had about the loudness of the planes. Has there been any research and development lately about, just making the engines quieter? It seems like in this modern day and age, we could, the cars are, nowadays you can't even hear cars. Why can't they make the plane, because there's so much traffic, we know that there's going to be a lot of planes around, but that would be my hope, that somebody would come up with a quieter plane. But and also I think another point I want to make is I agree with the flight pattern of going out on the ocean further, just a couple miles. I mean, it might cost a little bit more in fuel, but it just seems like, that's a concession they could make just to appease the public that are, so outraged at this point. So anyway.
Yes, and I think we will be talking about this more, but that could be part of our advocacy or public input, is to, some people call it shaming airlines, because they can do it. The modern technology is there. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, and some airlines actually have quieter airplanes. I remember when the biggest one was in the area some years ago, I asked, well, when is it taking off? I want to check it out. They said, oh, it already went out, and I had no clue that it went. It was a huge airline.
All right, so I also live in the back of the valley. So my question is, I've heard there's 8 noise monitors throughout the whole Bay Area. Is that right, that the FAA has?
No, there's probably around 29 permanent monitors, and they have some portable monitors. I've had them portable monitors sit in my backyard and I believe, Ken, you just had them complete. And those generally rotate, but I've asked the noise abatement office at SFO what monitors they may have south of the existing ones. And if you go on their website, you can readily see they'll have the number of the monitors, the permanent monitors.
Okay. And is that versus terrain? I mean, because obviously, right, I feel for the people in Valley Marks, I'm sure it's bouncing all over the place. For you guys in Brisbane, I know that's like half a bowl, so it's just bouncing right back, the noise. So, for us, somebody also mentioned it sounds like a thunderstorm. Yes, in the back of the valley, it just swooshes and it keeps echoing and echoing and echoing no matter, whatever height they are.
I live in the Park Pacific area too, and I've monitored in the past about on that 2-minute cycle.
Yes.
It depends on how far the vibration remains with you until the next one starts up.
Right.
And I swear to God, I can tell a difference with a takeoff and then a climb mode. But
so I guess my question is, in any of these meetings, has the FAA taken into account terrain? In the sense
well, I've
noise?
only been to maybe 2 or 3 of where they've had FAA representatives there, and terrain does impact your sense of tuning in on that noise. There are various noises that can set people off, and I heard some of the arrival people down in the San Jose or Palo Alto area that just by there's a protrusion from aircraft. You can get noise off of the airframe itself rather than just the engine. And it's a high pitch. And it's a really kind of somebody scratching their fingernails on a blackboard situation. So people react differently, and people are tuned in. Somebody said earlier their wife went deaf. My wife doesn't hear it the way I'm a light sleeper too. And you don't have to come out of your sleep all the way to be impacted, Sue's health-wise. There's a lot of talk about the impact of having inadequate sleep or in non-quality sleep in that case. There haven't been a whole lot of studies directly on it. I know when I was working for the Navy, we had a situation where we would take an aircraft engine and put it back in airframe and have to calibrate it to the air, the instrumentation in the aircraft. And we'd have sailors running the data between the control room for the run-ups and out there. And actually, one of the health issues we found is the ligaments in their sternum area were weakening to where we basically had to there's a lot of pressure. It's a sound as a pressure wave. And subtly, if you're being hit, and so we instituted new procedures where the sailors could not do that. We'd had to do it all by communications between the person in the cockpit, so to speak, doing the calibration versus the run-up calibrations on the new engine input.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I think he gave you some more health things to talk about when you talk to the ombudsman. So again, it's data, and I think with the different apps making it easier for you to do it than writing it on your calendar and doing the long SFO one. I looked at that. We have to fill in all the blanks. So try the other ones. Is there any more questions? And like I say, we have your email, so we expect more questions. We want to keep encouraging you to keep that information going. Quieter airplanes, the roundtable continually talks about that, continuous pressure on that, continuous monitoring. It is frustrating that we don't have what we call teeth in the matter, but the more the public gets involved, the more we actually will end up having teeth. And also, your property values, again, that's a very serious thing, and you can also mention that as well. So the insulation type of thing, first we hope that they change the routes so you won't have to have a problem with it, but we will be having, air travel is here to come until maybe railroads, you know what I mean. The railroads can compete if that ever happens. But I think your health issue is the most important thing. And obviously the safety of the plane and your ability to get places by plane is still a value. And we do expect airlines to make money, obviously. However, not at the expense of your health or your safety. So I think these are all very legitimate things. I think looking, and the roundtable is going to be looking for solutions. I think we're dedicated to that. We are also have almost like an oath that we will not allow pressure to the point of pushing noise to another community. So we really are all together in this, and it's gratifying that cities we pay a little bit of money to be part of this roundtable. And there was a while when the economy was bad that some of the cities were going to drop out. That was rather frightening because you don't want to drop out. You want to hang in there and be as tough as possible and to create teeth if you're not allowed teeth. You get my drift. So thank you for coming. Please do keep reporting, stay connected, never give up, encourage each other, and we do have to worry about the health and the property values, and so we do have to stay on top of this. Did you have a question or a statement?
Hi, my name is Anna Dominski. I live on Rockaway Beach Avenue, and I just want to say that there's that neighborhood app, Next Door Neighbor. For all of us here, let's get on there tonight or tomorrow or the next couple of days and post these whatever these things are called, these apps, so that everybody can get involved. And millions of complaints, that should be our goal. And I think we should have a deadline for the FAA to respond to us, because I don't feel good about this going on and on and on. And 5 years from now, they're going to have triple-decker flights going vertical and 5 up beyond that. I say enough already. Let's just say, hey, look, we'll give you 6 months to get back to our community of what the heck you're going to do, or else we're not going to take it anymore. I'm mad as hell, aren't you? I'm so mad. And I'm not just physically ill, physically upset about things, but mentally too. I timed these flights, and every, what was it? It was like 2 minutes and then 1 minute for the plane to take off. And I'm telling you, it's really upsetting. So that's it.
No, thank you for that. And the next door is really good. I actually would say, don't give them 6 months. No way. Your health issues are now. I would say it's now, and push for now. 6 months gives too much time. Say no now. All right, so I'm going to call it quits if you don't mind. You can stay and talk to anybody. All right, thank you very much for your advocacy, and please don't let up. Thank you very much.
Folks, there's some flyers on the meeting Thursday. 3 pages, so yeah. Yeah, you can take them. There's 3 pages.